Recording in progress.
We're good.
Call to order the Village of Riverside Planning and Zoning Commission regular meeting of Wednesday, October 27th, 2021. Francisco, please call the roll.
Okay. Commissioner Brahm.
I'm here.
Commissioner Marhol.
Here.
Commissioner Miller.
Here.
Commissioner Hennigan.
Here.
Commissioner Pelletier.
Here.
Chairperson Mateo.
I'm finally here. Again, apologies for the delay.
And Commissioner Matthews is absent tonight.
We have a quorum. Can I have a motion to approve the Planning and Zoning Commission regular meeting minutes of September 22nd, 2021?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
Well, do we have discussion of any changes at this point or after the second?
After the second.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it, but I do have some suggested changes.
So my suggested changes, Trustee Pollock's name is still misspelled, so if that can be changed throughout before it gets to the board, please. Other edits?
Yeah, I had a few edits on the things that I had said that evening, and I can just say here what I think is the correct restatement, but if there's any question about it, just contact me and I'll try and do a better job. At the bottom of page 3, I had mentioned that there were 2 factors in the prior case that I thought supported the variation. One of which was that the contractor had testified that the property owners couldn't reduce the existing foundation or cut it down, garage foundation. They would have to totally replace it. That was one factor. And the other factor was that it was clear that the owners had just purchased it and were considered the oversized garage to be of sort of special value to them. I don't know how I phrased it that night. Those were the 2 factors. And then at the bottom of page 4, I had suggested that as part of the work plan, the PZC look into the definition of detached structure in the code. And for example, whether decks and pools should be considered detached or attached structures, because a change to the code I think that's going through right now is that 12% rule for detached structures. So I think it should be clear if those other, what we consider detached or attached. And then as to the changes to the R3 bulk regulations, I just wanted to clarify what I was saying there more so than was in the comments, which is I thought the PCC should consider changes to the bulk regulations for that area and possibly offer other assistance to those property owners where flooding has occurred in the past in order to make it easier for them to make improvements to their structures to address potential future flooding. And those were my changes.
Any other changes? Okay, so with those edits, please call the roll.
Commissioner Pelletier.
Aye.
Commissioner Hennigan.
Abstain.
Commissioner Marhol.
Aye.
Commissioner Miller.
Aye.
Commissioner Brahm.
Aye.
And Chairperson Mateo.
Aye.
And Commissioner Matthews is absent.
So that motion passes. Next on our agenda, visitors, petitions, citizen requests, and communications. It looks like everybody who's here is here for the public hearing, unless there's something that somebody wants to say at this point. Hearing none, we can move on to the liaison report. Is there a village board update?
No village board update.
Well, the board was supposed to vote on the accessory building structure, accessory building text amendments that we had a public hearing on in September. but they tabled that.
I believe so.
If you don't mind, I can step in and explain what transpired. The board meeting last Thursday, the village board was, they had a couple of comments or concerns about the language that was recommended by the Planning and Zoning Commission, and asked that Trustee Pollock review with staff a couple of items, and we met today to do so. There's a little bit of research that we need to do based on prior Planning and Zoning Commission meetings held with this group, as well as other data that staff is collecting. And we will be checking in with the village board members, specifically Trustee Pollock, and then they should be providing an update, or at least a discussion may take place just for an update on November 18th. They deferred the item until at least that date. So we'll give you additional updates pending there's a Planning and Zoning Commission meeting in November. And any of you are welcome to reach out to Francisco or myself if you have questions, or Chairperson Mateo as well. So.
Thank you for that. Moving on, we have a public hearing and recommendation. This is PZ 21-03, a variation request for 178 Maplewood Road. Request for a side yard setback variation from section 10.7.4, table 7 on permitted encroachments of the Village of Riverside zoning ordinance to allow the construction of a 2-story, 3-season room on an already existing deck. The petitioners are Nicole and Carrie Montgomery. Public notice was published in the Landmark on October 13th, 2021, and will be entered into the record as an exhibit. Can you please call the roll to approve opening the public hearing? We're going to have a lot of roll calls today.
Okay. Okay. So Commissioner Braun,
Here.
Commissioner Marhol, here. Commissioner Miller,
Here.
Commissioner Hennigan,
Here.
Commissioner Pelletier,
Here.
Chairperson Mateo,
Still here.
and Commissioner Matthews is absent.
Okay, so the next step is to swear in anybody who will be giving testimony. So if that's you, if you would stand up and raise your right hand, please. Stand if you're able. Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give is true to the best of your knowledge? This is so awkward.
Just there.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Francisco, can you give us the staff summary, please?
Yes. So the property at 178 Maplewood is seeking a variation for a 2-story, 3-season room in the rear of the property. The property is currently zoned R1AA. The existing deck that is in the rear of the house is currently allowed under the village ordinance, except with the proposal, it would be something that is not allowed in the rear, as it would be considered an enclosed porch, and it would encroach into the side yard. And currently the deck that is there is 21 by 12. So the proposal is to enclose that existing deck and then also build about a 100 or 94.5 square foot deck off of that enclosure. And the required side setbacks for this property are 17 feet, and the current ones, I believe it's in here, are the current side setback or enclosed, proposed setbacks for the side would be about 15 feet, so it would be 2-foot encroachment. And then this particular property is it's a weird shape, and I can share my screen. I have a PowerPoint just to kind of give an idea of what it looks like. So All right, so this is the property. This is just an aerial view from our GIS that we took a snippet of. And then this is the existing measurements for, this is the rear here of the yard with the existing deck. And then there's a little portion here. It's not super clear, but this is the edge of the southern property of the deck here. It's about 13 feet. And then this is the site plan and how these are the yards that we determined with the highlighted side yards here. And the particular deck would be, this is the existing deck, and then this is the existing 95 square foot, a little bump out from the enclosure that is being proposed. And then this is the side setback here that is, you know, what it's encroaching into. And then just the, kind of the permitted encroachments that are allowed and not allowed on page 2 of the memo in table 7. So the petitioners are seeking, you know, the variation for that side yard encroachment and also the enclosure of the existing deck.
Okay. Next, we'll hear from the petitioners and their, can you stop sharing your screen if you're done, please? From the petitioners and their architects, Abby and Greg Randall. But in my rush to get the meeting started, I forgot to ask Attorney Mars to do his little blurb about meeting remotely.
Thank you, Chairperson Mateo. Just for the record, we are meeting electronically tonight, and we're authorized to do that due to the ongoing public health emergency and consistent with the governor's most recent emergency declaration, as well as amendments made to the Open Meetings Act, which allow these remote type of meetings during public health emergencies that have been declared statewide. If anybody has trouble hearing each other tonight, please either contact the host or speak up. And as Chairperson Mateo has been doing, all votes need to be by roll call. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Mars. Okay, I'd like to hear from the members.
Thank you for the time tonight to discuss the variation for our property. We purchased a home in April of this year. The property had an existing deck with a screened-in porch. We removed the screened-in porch very early on due to some safety issues. It was not in very good repair. And in looking to replace that, we're looking for a variance to enclose that, a 3-season room in close to the same area that the screened-in porch was at, and then putting a deck on top that would be accessed through the upper floor of the building. It would not have a roof on it. It would just be a deck with the required railing. It would not have access down to down to the property from the outside. It would only be from the inside. So we are asking for a variation so we can continue that process and rebuild the porch in the rear yard.
Okay, commissioners, do you have any questions for the owners or the architects?
Could you clarify where the additional deck is being, sorry, I'm not phrasing this quite right, but in the documents, it says that there's some additional deck being added to what you already had. I'm not seeing where that is on the drawings.
So in the PDF copies, they start on page 24, but on the paper copies, it is after, I didn't mark these pages. It is after the certificate of compliance and the density calculations. I don't know what piece this is. But it's, if anybody's on the PDF electronic copy, the plan started.
So there's to keep you going, Francisco. There's oh, I'm sorry. I do see where you're speaking of. It's in the plan view.
Yes. And then it's also on the plat of survey. It's not a very good scan, but it's the kind of light off-white little strip.
The plan view by the architect is actually the best place to see it. And from what I can tell, that additional, can we just, for convenience sake, call this deck extension, is bringing that south corner closer to the property line?
Correct.
Other questions?
I just have a comment and just a clarification on the application. I think there's a typo, but I just wanted to confirm on the application, it says it is a single family residence. The owner is building a 3-story addition. I know that 3-season room and 2 stories, it could be mixed up. So I'm assuming that's a typo. I'm assuming that should be a 2-story addition.
Yes.
I noticed the same thing in
Okay.
that one reference, yeah.
I just wanted to make it clear on the record, right? So it's not a 3-story addition.
Correct.
Okay.
Are you referring to page 1 of the application?
Page, well, it would be page 3 of the application. Well, it could be page 1. It starts
Yeah,
off,
it's page
Oh,
3,
please.
sub B there.
Okay.
yeah.
Oh, thank you.
And I, truthfully, I figured it was a mistake, but I just wanted to make sure.
Yes, thank you. It definitely.
We're building a bell tower.
Could be a hawk watching tower.
Yes.
Can you remind us what materials you're going to use? I think you said that it's going to match the current exterior of the house to some extent.
Yeah, it's, are we on?
Well, yeah, I took it off.
All right. Yeah, primarily it's just wood trim around the structural elements with like paneled sills below the windows. The windows themselves are a particular product developed up in Minnesota for this purpose. It's not insulated glass. It's actually a high strength clear vinyl that we've used for 3-season rooms in the past. Their demonstrations are actually pretty fascinating. They show that they're pushing on it with their fist and it deforms and it eventually goes back without rupturing. So it's actually a really interesting product. There's 3 panels. You can lift all the panels to the top, slide them all down. There's a screen that goes along with it. The area that is actually behind the fireplace, the gas fireplace, will actually be the same as the siding that's on the house. So,
Non-composite.
yeah. And then the deck will be a TimberTech decking, a composite decking to cut down on maintenance and degradation issues. So.
Other questions?
This is more of a verification, but it looks like the enclosed portion will the south corner of the enclosed portion will still remain a greater distance from the property line than the existing house, correct or not? Or about the same?
It's a little bit beyond it.
No, it's actually, if this is the
Yeah, so it's further away.
existing house. Oh yeah, it's a little bit further. The enclosed portion of the house will be a little bit further from the side yard than the existing.
That's what I thought. Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions, comments? Concerns? I have a question for Francisco. Did the office receive any comments since the memo was made available?
No comments, no phone calls or emails, nothing in terms of, objections or anything, or any comments or anything like that.
And there's nobody in the waiting room?
Let's see. No, nobody.
Okay. All right. Well, if you'd like to make a final comment, I think all of our questions have been answered.
No, I just, again, we appreciate the time to look at this. The section that we're building, we do not have any neighbors directly on either side based on how far back the house is set. It won't be adding any height to current structure that's there, and will not change any sight lines for any of the surrounding homes. So we just appreciate the time and look forward to your decision.
Okay, well, if there's nothing further, is there a motion to either close or continue the public hearing?
Final question. You said that there was an existing screen porch there. Did that, and I believe you just said, or tell me if I'm misquoting you, that existing porch was about the same footprint as the proposed that you've got, correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
I move that the public hearing be closed.
Second.
I don't want to rush anything because once we close that part of the hearing, our conversations are only amongst the commission.
Just real quick, the owners shared an image of the existing from the selling listing. And I don't know if it would help to share that. I don't know. And I don't know if there's an easy way of sharing that, but they sent it to us just prior to the meeting because we had asked about it. If it's of interest, we can share that.
I think the photos that were provided are sufficient because we're seeing the existing state.
Okay.
Thank you, though. Okay, please call the roll.
Okay, Commissioner.
So to be clear, the motion was to close the meeting, not continue, correct?
Correct.
Correct.
Okay. Please call the roll.
Commissioner Pelletier,
Aye.
Commissioner Hennigan,
Aye.
Commissioner Miller,
Aye.
Commissioner Marhol,
Aye.
Commissioner Brahm,
Aye.
Chairperson Mateo, and Commissioner Matthews is absent.
So that motion passes. So commissioners, is somebody prepared to make a motion or do you want to have some discussion first?
I feel comfortable making a motion if no one wants to discuss the matter.
Well, we will have discussion, but if we're ready to make that motion, we can go ahead and do so.
Okay. I move that we approve the variation requested in the matter of PZ 21-003.
Second.
So we're not approving, we're recommending approval.
Right, the commission recommends approval by the board.
Okay. So discussion, any concerns?
I'm sorry,
Please.
this is Commissioner Pelletier. I'm concerned that we're proposing a porch in a rear yard where it's not allowed. I don't understand where the hardship, excuse me. Sorry, where the hardship is coming in. I mean, I know that there was an existing screened-in porch, but now we're making a second floor to that. And in the ordinance, it specifically states that not only are screened-in porches not allowed in the backyard, but you can't put a second floor door onto the roof of a porch on the rear of a building. So I guess I don't see where this differs from an addition as opposed to a porch. It's closed in with vinyl, as Greg described, and it's heated with a firebox.
Francisco, do you want to tackle part of that?
So we, I don't know if Ashley maybe remembers this a little bit better than I do. So we saw that rear porches are not allowed. I don't know, Ashley, do you want to chime in? I don't know if you remember this a little bit better than I do. I'm blanking for.
So regardless, the enclosure of a structure, right? The enclosure of the deck itself creates the encroachment. And so whether it's a porch structure or a addition structure, the request for a side yard setback variation would still apply. And so whether they have a porch structure that is supported by a deck foundation or would be supported by a concrete pad or other type of more significant foundation that would be pertaining to an addition, likely would still require that side yard setback in this location. The petitioner's request for it to be a porch guided our decision in how to label it for a request. The architects might be able to provide or the residents may be able to provide an explanation for why they've selected this type of structure to be constructed. And, we would, from a building standpoint and the building's review and plan review, review this as it's requested and go through that permitting process should it be an approved variation. Does that answer those questions at all? We did also have some discussion about the second story door and whether it would be appropriate to approve it's its own variation. I don't know if Michael, you have a more defined or a better response than mine about why this is or not applicable.
Sure. Yeah, so that section 1073H, which talks about not having doors to second floor encroaching porches and not building up from an encroaching porch. The way we do that is, if you have a legal non-conforming porch that exists, those are going to apply. But here, what is being requested is a side yard setback variation that will make this essentially conforming. So once should that variation be granted, that section, it's no longer an encroaching porch because you have in essence blessed it through the variation. And so that section no longer applies. It really just applies to situations where somebody wants to go up from an existing porch that's already in a setback without a variation, or to put some kind of roof and decking on top of an existing encroaching porch without getting a variation.
So I guess my point was not the fact that it's a porch or an addition, but I feel like we would not be inclined to approve an addition to a home within a setback. But because we're calling it a porch, we might consider that variation.
I'm not sure that that statement is true. If you look at this rather uniquely shaped piece of property and you consider the absence of neighbors basically on either side, they have one house to their north, there is no house to the south, and there's the river to their west. So therefore, I'm not sure if we called this an addition, I wouldn't still be inclined to grant it as a variation.
If I may, I also would be inclined to grant it as a variation. I think that there's practical difficulties with regard to this lot, and also the fact that the existing house is already in violation, I think, of the rear yard setback. This is a very unique property.
Francisco, you said the rear yard setback was to code, correct?
So the rear yard setback is 75 feet. And if you are measuring the rear yard setback from the house, it doesn't encroach into the rear yard setback. And then in the certificate of compliance from the most recent one, it also cites that the house itself already goes into this required side yard setback. But the center line of the site plan also states that the center line of the property goes through the middle of the Des Plaines River. So that also kind of, it changes the rear setbacks depending on how one looks at the rear yard setback, because you can't really build anything in the river. So it goes back and forth in terms of the distance between the physical end of the property and the actual center line of the river.
So Francisco, are you saying that the rear yard setback is met only because you're measuring to the center of the river, not if you measured to the retaining wall?
So if you measure from the corner of the house to the middle of the river, I believe the setback is, I believe it's 100 feet. And then if you measure to the physical end of the property, I believe the measurement, I think on the PowerPoint was, I believe it's like 60 feet or something like that. So if you do measure into the center line of the river, yes, it is met the rear setback. If you measure to the center, to the physical end of the property, it does not meet the rear yard setback.
So what do the rest of you think about practical difficulties or hardships?
I'm in agreement with Commissioner Braun that this is an oddly shaped lot with five sides I can count. Debating, I suppose, with the survey about what exactly is the limit of the property is perhaps best left to higher legal minds. because I don't quite understand, and I'll point to Attorney Mars here. I don't quite always understand the ownership of river bottoms. I know that there's a lot of legal debate on those things related to water levels and such. If this was an addition, because the enclosed portion does not increase the encroachment, I would also tend to allow it.
And just to address the lot line. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Attorney Mears.
Just to follow up on Commissioner Marhol's comment, the lot lines along the displays typically, to my understanding, do go partway out into the river. That doesn't mean you don't need special permissions to do things within the river, but it is platted to go out into the river. I mean, it's a platted lot with a boundary that's in the water.
And that's why it's odd, but I think we have to, in any case dealing with the river, we have to accept the fact that the lots were platted to some point in the river. I'm not challenging that.
I think we need to consider what's the point of having a rear yard and a rear yard setback. If the rear yard extends into the river, they can't use that part of their property regardless. They can't build anything there. So why are we saying that they should also suffer, and we should look at the rear yard as being even smaller? And therefore, it seems not very practical to look at it in that way.
Well, in this case, it's actually a benefit to have the rear lot line into the river because it provides more distance.
That's true, right?
So actually, in this case, that measurement is beneficial to determining the rear yard setback.
That's true.
Though the
But I think
river is
the reason
technically a
for
public way.
rear yard setbacks in large part is to protect the neighbors on the opposite side of that property line. There is no neighbor on the opposite side of their property line.
And I'm going to jump into Commissioner Peltier's comment is it's a public way. So I would argue that we are protecting the public way with the setback, regardless of who's the backyard neighbor, whether it be a private property owner or whether it be kayakers or someone who's part of the public.
I see that as a highly impractical way of looking at the situation, but that's my opinion.
Commissioner Hennigan, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, going back to some of our earlier discussion, as a few commissioners have mentioned, the configuration of the lot, the unusual shape is fairly unique, not only just due to the lot lines, but the way the existing house is placed on the lot creates some unique conditions and some hardships, in my opinion, that makes it much more difficult for them to build on this property as it would be if the lot were completely vacant, and then it could meet all the setbacks without too much trouble, I wouldn't think. But that existing house being set in that back corner does pose some challenges that I think aren't broadly applicable to other properties in town.
Any other thoughts before we formally go through the standards?
I would just like to point out that I do feel that this situation could broadly apply because many buildings are built right up to the rear yard setback. And those properties are not allowed a porch in the backyard. The fact that this house is already encroaching in the backyard really isn't an argument to further encroach into the backyard with a use that's not allowed. To some extent, it is an unusual lot. But I think that condition could apply to many homes where they are at the backyard and are not allowed a porch. I would also argue that they have a side yard that's almost a street yard because it does face Pine, doesn't it?
Mhm.
That one property line is actually the right of way of Pine Street.
I mean, I think my understanding of that area is they have the side yard and then there's a wooden fence. And then there is a section of land that abuts Pine. And then there's a street. I mean, that's the point. There is no neighbor to that side of their house. And to think that we're protecting people who are driving around the corner of Pine from the existence of a porch that petitioners would like to build because we want it to be, you know, we want them to not do that because of our side yard setback. It just seems, like I said, it seems very impractical. There is no neighbor on that side.
Thank you.
To say that there's a street on that side doesn't mean there's a neighbor on that side.
Okay. Let's start going through the standards. The first one, and Greg's going to have a flashback with me reading these. Because of a particular physical or other unusual condition of the specific property involved, a particular hardship or practical difficulty to the owner would result, as distinguished from a mere inconvenience, if the strict letter of the regulations were to be carried out. Such conditions may include, but are not limited to, the presence of an existing use or structure, whether conforming or non-conforming, irregular or substandard shape or size, exceptional topographical features, or other extraordinary physical condition peculiar to and inherent in the subject property that amounts to more than a mere inconvenience to the owner and that relate to or arises out of the lot and or structures thereon, rather than the personal situation of the current owner of the lot. Or situations in which the ordinance prevents the owner from reestablishing, restoring, or maintaining a material feature or significant architectural feature related to the lot or structure, or from maintaining the architectural integrity of the lot or structure. So I heard several of you talk about the shape of the lot, the multiple property lines, the location of the principal structure on the lot, the river being on their property. Are there other comments that you want to add into here to make an argument that this is a practical difficulty?
I think it clearly is a practical difficulty that's been created by the placement of the existing house on the lot. In the location it is in relationship to the side lot line and the rear of the property. It does not arise out of, the hardship arises out of the location of the house on this particular piece of property and the unusual or irregular shape of this piece of property.
And I believe the majority of the commissioners believe that this standard has been met. Yes, no?
I do, yes.
I do as well.
Thank you. B, the purpose of the variation is not based primarily upon desire to increase financial gain.
Seems clear to me.
Don't think they're doing this to make money. The alleged difficulty or hardship has not been created by any person presently having an interest in the property.
That's clear. They didn't build the house the way it is or set out the lot lines.
They just bought the house.
D, the conditions upon which the petition for variation is based would not be applicable generally to other property within the same zoning classification. Commissioner Pelletier, you don't believe the standard has been met. Is that right?
I don't believe the standard is met. I think that this could easily apply to many properties in the village.
What do others think?
I would agree with Commissioner Peltier. Our odd lot lot shapes and sizes are endemic through the village?
The odd lots may be in certain situations, but in the R1AA district, which is specifically this district, that's what the regulation applies to. I don't think sitting here that we can say that we think possibly there are other lots that were with a house in this kind of location, and therefore we should find that this condition is not met. I mean, I just don't think we have the information to make that conclusion.
Commissioner Braun, any thoughts?
I know that there are houses set back on their lots in Riverside. I can't think of another house in this particular location along the river where they're backing into Pine, which really, I would agree, has no back neighbors. But I don't know all of the houses in Riverside, but I think that this standard has been met. I think that this is, again, an unusual lot. And I don't think that this cannot be applied. This would be applied generally to other lots, this variation.
If you look at exactly the way D is written, that's what it says. It doesn't say you don't have other odd-shaped lots. It says the conditions upon which the variation is based would not be applicable generally to other property. We generally don't have other properties with a similarly irregularly shaped lot with the placement of the house like this. There may be a few, possibly, but not in general.
Commissioner Hennigan, anything to add on this one?
Nothing to add. I think Commissioner Braun summed up most of what I would say there.
Okay. E, the granting of the variation will not be detrimental to the public welfare or injurious to other property improvements in the neighborhood in which the property is located.
I think the standard has been met as it's no closer than the existing structure.
I would agree. And while the new enclosed porch is slightly bigger, the new enclosed porch is not closer than the old one was. Closer to the lot line. Sorry. So I agree with E, or agree with Commissioner Hennigan.
Okay. F, the granting of the variation will not alter the essential character of the neighborhood. Any concerns there?
No.
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 And finally, G, the proposed variation will not impair an adequate supply of light or air to adjacent property or substantially increase the congestion of public streets or increase the danger of fire or impair natural drainage or create drainage problems on adjacent properties or endanger the public safety or substantially diminish or impair property values within the neighborhood. Any concerns there?
No.
It's away from the street, it's away from neighboring properties. Any final thoughts? So the motion is to recommend approval of the variation request to the board. Francisco, please call the roll.
Commissioner Braun,
Aye.
Commissioner Marhol,
Aye.
Commissioner Miller,
Yes.
Commissioner Hennigan,
Aye.
Commissioner Pelletier.
So I just want to confirm that we are required to find all of these findings we need to agree with in order to recommend, I mean, in good conscience, recommend the variation. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you. So I am concerned that this generally applies to other properties, that we are, other properties, buildings are, it's not the shape of the lot that creates the similarity, but rather the placement of the building. If the building is up against right at the rear yard or side yard setback, then that building is not allowed to have an enclosed porch, nor a second story to that enclosed porch. So my concern is with the fact that it may apply to other properties. And so I say, do not recommend that we approve the variation.
Chairperson Mateo,
Aye.
and then Commissioner Matthews is absent.
Okay, that motion carries. Thank you for that really thoughtful discussion. Thank you to the petitioners and the Randalls for coming tonight. So again, we are a recommending body. This will go to the Board of Trustees, maybe for one of their November meetings. Probably, well, I don't know, will it be ready for the first meeting in November, which is the 4th? That's next week.
I would anticipate, Chairperson Mateo, that it would likely go on the 18th, just to give us time to record these minutes, prepare a finding of fact that can be reviewed. So we'll shoot for the 18th of November.
That makes more sense. So thank you again for coming tonight. Next on our agenda, old business, a continued discussion of the work plan. Francisco, that's you.
Do you have that one? I can't find that one, Ashley. I don't know if you have that one.
It's just a discussion item. So based upon my recollection of the last meeting in September, the discussion was that there was receipt of some ideas from the commissioners that were aired. We've noted them in the minutes of the prior meeting and that you've reviewed. And I think the idea is to see if there's any additional feedback on any of those ideas in order to give an opportunity for Chairperson Mateo and staff to finalize a work plan to bring back to you.
And are there any additional ideas?
Honestly, I think the transit-oriented development code updates will be sufficient.
So are you suggesting that we not add, for example, the calculations for impervious surface to the work plan?
No, sorry, I think that's probably going to be the bulk of our discussion, but impervious area, and I did read these minutes, it will be the TOD issue plus the other items that were mentioned are sufficient for this upcoming year.
Other thoughts?
I agree that the TOD zoning code issue is going to take a lot of time. I looked into that myself a little bit. I also looked at the minutes and it seemed like that the impervious surface was maybe a part of that. I think we need to consider both. I agree that that's a lot of stuff. That's a lot right there.
And I've done nothing since our last meeting. Hopefully we'll do better going forward. We did have a second steering committee for the zoning update. So we've now, as a committee working with RTA and the planners, gone through all of their suggestions. So what's going to happen next, we think, is that they're going to do a presentation to the Board of Trustees, maybe before the end of the year. And then at some point, it's going to come to us and we'll have a public hearing. Hopefully all of this will wrap up by May. That's the end of our contract. I understand that staff has done some initial requesting of information from the village engineers about how they calculate water usage, impervious surfaces. So that's getting started, which is great.
Commissioner Mateo, sorry, Chairperson Mateo, can we have early warning of when this is going to be presented in front of the board? Just
Absolutely.
so that we can attend rather than trying to read minutes and such and get a gauge of that room.
Sure. They're currently scheduled for the first meeting in December. Is that right?
Yes,
Which I don't have my calendar in front of me, but
I
first
believe
Thursday.
December 2nd. I have to run around the corner to a calendar to check, but
December 2nd is a Thursday.
very good. That is the plan. We will provide notice ahead. We are currently limiting the space within the board chambers. There is room for the public, the general public, to sit within the building, and it's also live broadcast through this. So if you prefer to watch from the comfort of your home but live, you're welcome to do that as well.
Can someone clarify who is doing this presentation? Or who will be doing this presentation?
Yes, the planners that the steering committee has been working with in coordination with CMAP and RTA, they're going to provide a presentation of a summary overview, and not in minute detail, but a good broad overview of the work that's been done so far, the proposed topics and issues, and then make sure that the steering committee is on the right track according to the village board's interests and the other feedback from the public before we finalize the code.
Ashley, I'm sorry, I'm not doing titles right now. Did the village pick this, choose the consultant, or were they chosen by RTA CMAP? Or do you know?
Chairperson Mateo might actually have the answer to that.
I believe that RTA put out a request for
Proposals?
applicants, and so that's how they came to it.
Okay, so it was through RTA.
Yep.
The village is agreeing to participate in the process. RTA is fronting the resources to do this. Okay.
Mhm.
And so the planners are not our agents. They're not the village's agent. They're not the village's contractor. Is that correct?
Correct.
They
That's
don't
what that
represent
would
the
mean.
village's interests. They're someone that the steering committee has been working with as a separate party.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
Thanks. Thank you.
I'm trying to think of his company's name, but I'm blanking on it. It begins with an E. But he has this private firm where he works with different municipalities and organizations.
I believe it's Egret and Ox.
Thank you. That is it. How could I forget that? Anything else about the work plan?
Just that I don't think the impervious area discussion is necessarily, in fact, it's not tied to the transit-oriented development. I think that's a village-wide issue. Transit-oriented development is certainly part of the village in terms of how we're situated in relation to the metro area, but I don't think those two discussions are tied together in any significant fashion.
They are separate. Okay, well, our next meeting is Monday, November 22nd. So hopefully that's already on your calendar. Any other information coming from staff? It's not on the agenda, so probably not. Okay, motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
We have a first and a second. Please call the roll.
Let's see. Commissioner Pelletier,
Aye.
Commissioner Hennigan,
Aye.
Commissioner Marhold,
Aye.
Commissioner Miller,
Aye.
Commissioner Brahm,
Aye.
Chairperson Mateo.
Aye.
and
Motion
Commissioner
carries.
Sorry.
Commissioner Matthews is not here. Thank you, everyone. And again, apologies for the hiccup at the beginning of the meeting. Hope everyone stays healthy and safe, and we'll see you on November 22nd.